So would start drinking these wine coolers, and obviously, you're that young, you have a few sips off of a wine cooler, and
Zero
you're
tolerance.
zero tolerance, exactly. But this is when he started molesting me and my sister.
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
In this episode, Amber shares her courageous journey of survival, resilience, and transformation. From being exposed to alcohol at a very young age and enduring repeated experiences of sexual trauma to battling years of addiction and countless rock bottoms, Amber's story is raw and real. But her turning point came when she decided enough was enough, choosing sobriety and rebuilding her life. Now, with over 7 years of sobriety, Amber helps others heal as a CPTSD advocate, self-confidence coach, and self-love mentor. Her story is one of pain turned into power and proof that healing is possible. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome to Rock Bottom with Ryan. Amber. Would you please introduce yourself, kind of tell us where you're from and what your drug of choice was, and kind of give us a little quick background?
Yeah, so my name is Amber White Dawn. I am a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. I would say drugs of choice. I always say I'm an everything addict. It's about the disease of addiction and not the substance. But if we want to break it down to substances, it was mostly alcohol, cocaine, and weed, and quite a bit of hallucinogenics.
Okay. What kind of hallucinogenics?
I was a hippie kid, so I'm a product of a hippie. So I was definitely one of those kids that went to a lot of festivals, a lot of raves. So you got the mushrooms, the acid, the mescaline, the ecstasy, all of the above.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, mushrooms, I think, was the only hallucinogen I've ever done. Um, well, I did ecstasy and Molly and stuff like that, but that's not really hallucinogens, but yeah.
They're in
Um,
the hallucinogenic category. You take enough of them.
all right. Yeah, no, my last mushroom trip was horrible. So, I mean, probably done it like 12 times, and my last one was like I spent the entire day in a room staring out a window, and it was when I was hungover too. So it was like my anxiety was bad, the anxiety, and I did mushrooms that morning. So I just
Oh,
spent the whole day miserable. Um,
no good.
so yeah, do you mind kind of going into like when you started, kind of what your childhood was like, and maybe go into maybe any childhood trauma or complications that may have like led to start using and how it progressed from there?
Yeah, so I grew up in, like many of us in recovery, and still using tumultuous childhood. So my childhood was on the road a lot. My mother was still in her addiction at the time, and we traveled all over the place. I can't even name all of the places that we lived in the different states that we lived in. There were times when, we would be living in the car, just, driving to wherever, or a lot of the early years, I do remember just being in the car. And I lived in Colorado. That's where I was born. And I have vague memories from when I was really little, at different apartment complexes that we lived in. My mom kind of always made sure at a certain point she realized that she could have a place for us to live if she managed apartment complexes. And so they would just give her like free rent. And so we lived at apartment complexes in Denver that were kind of in like the gang affiliated neighborhoods. So I was the minority, even though, I'm Native American, but I have lighter skin. But I lived in a complete neighborhood full of, blacks, and there were some few Asian families and what have you. But it was all gangs. Drugs were just kind of around.
What was the neighborhood called?
Aurora, Aurora,
Okay.
Denver. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like right off the Aurora Highway. Early childhood memories are just, kind of they're a little blurry, just because I have blocked a lot of that out, and most recently I've been doing a little bit of work to kind of root out some of those traumas that you talked about, root out like what was causing me to run basically, because for me it was like a constant running during my active addiction. I was constantly running from myself and running from past things that had happened. So we moved around a lot. I digress. So when we finally like got to a point where we were like stable at this one particular apartment complex, and trigger warning, there was a maintenance man there who had a couple of nieces that were my sister and I's age. I have an older sister and a younger brother, and we would go and hang out with his nieces. But sometimes the nieces weren't at his apartment, so my mom would just drop us off over there. And I must have been, let's see, my brother had just been born, like I might have been 7 or 8, and he would give us wine coolers. So we would start drinking these wine coolers, and obviously, you're that young, you have a few sips off of a wine cooler, and
Zero
you're
tolerance.
zero tolerance, exactly. But this is when he started molesting me and my sister. And so, long story short of it, as this went on for a while, I can't, time is something I don't quite remember how long it was, but basically I was the first one to come forward, and I had told one of the neighbor girls that was a little bit older about, some of the stuff that was happening, and she was like, "Yo, you need to tell your mom." And so I told my mom, and we went through this whole like, talk to the investigators, talk to child protective services, talk to, all of these child psychologists. I don't know how many interviews I did. Um, and the investigation ended, I think it was at like 50 some odd children that he had been hurting. So I was supposed to actually be a witness at the case. And, as a 7-year-old kid, like I don't even understand what's going on,
That's the exact age that I suffered sexual trauma, so I totally get the confusion and like you don't know where to go with it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely confusion. You're just like, okay, like I didn't even understand, like nobody had ever explained to me why that was wrong, you know? Like I took somebody hurting me for it to be like, "Oh, that's not okay." Whereas like I've had, in my adult life, I've had friends that are like, "Oh yeah, like my mom always told me like stranger danger, like, if this happens, like you need to tell somebody." But it was never a conversation that was had with me when I was little. And I give my mom a lot of love and grace because she was still in her active addiction, but there are moments when I have to kind of take a step back and say, you know, why would you just drop us off over there? Without checking to make sure that the nieces were there. And why did this go on for so long? And so these questions are definitely, I'm gonna have to have these uncomfortable conversations with my mom. Me and my sister most recently started talking about some of this stuff, and we've decided that like it's a time that we're gonna probably have to sit down as a family and talk about some of this stuff. Um, so that's kind of like when, the first time I ever had alcohol, the first time I ever had like, mind you, my mom was again in her active addiction. So there was just alcohol around all the time. There
What
were
what was her addiction?
mostly, I mean, I'm assuming mostly alcohol, but she's told me, like marijuana, cocaine, those were things that happened, things that
Yeah,
I don't know her complete story, and that's for her to tell, but the pieces that she's told me, she has a hell of a story. Let me tell you what, like again, I don't like to tell other people's stories, even my family. Like if it's their story, it's their story to tell.
like my mother, I would want her on, but she refuses to be on camera and talk about things.
Yeah, they're of a different generation,
Yeah,
Another thing that like I really want to drive home to some of the people in my generation. I'm almost 40. And I feel like the Gen Zers are like opening the gates to being able to like talk about this stuff.
I agree. I think, yeah,
Gen Zers
sobriety
are
is becoming popular now.
Sobriety is becoming popular. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about sexual traumas and sexual
Yes.
abuse. We're talking about these things because when you start talking about it, you get your power back.
Yeah.
You get your power back, and that's something that is like, nothing can take that away from you when you start to say no, like I suffered from this too, or this happened to me too, and it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, yeah, everybody I'm meeting on here doing this show, they'll say something that even if we come from completely different backgrounds, something I can relate to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the fact that I can meet people that have been through something similar that I thought I was the only one, it just feels so good. And social media as well, just seeing people post things that just strike me. I'm like, I feel bad because 20 years ago, people weren't able to open up like this to people. So,
Exactly. So that's why, like, with your mom and my mom, like, it's like
yeah,
we just kind of say, it's okay. Like, it's okay. I'm sure you have somebody that you can talk to. Hopefully, you can talk to somebody. You don't need to recover out loud. You don't need to be on a podcast. Still love you, but I feel like it's the healing process that is so much more powerful when we do recover out loud, when we do talk about these kind of childhood traumas and things that have happened to us, so
I
that,
agree.
like you said, other people can relate. Other people can say, wow, like they're just like, they got no shame. And you shouldn't
Exactly.
have no shame. You should have absolutely no shame for something that happened to you. You don't own that shit.
I
That
know.
shit, you know, you didn't do anything wrong.
Exactly. And then, like, even when you just were talking about your mother and your relationship with her and stuff, and like how it's been hard for you as an adult to still address some of these things, like that immediately struck me because I'm really close with my mom. She's like my best friend now. And she got sober a year and a half ago, around the same time I was trying to get sober. And I had relapsed. So she has more time than me, but I still, have some resentments just a little bit that I haven't dealt with her where, uh, a lot of the stuff I dealt with as a kid, where she did her best to make ends meet while she was active in her alcoholism. And she was never like mean to me, but she definitely was negligent in a lot of ways and let a lot of things happen that probably shouldn't have happened. So I could totally relate to that.
Yeah, and something just kind of struck me where it was like, my mom and I actually share the same recovery birthday. Is that not
Wow.
crazy? I know.
Yeah, that is so
That was
cool.
a complete like higher power thing. That was not planned. I didn't plan to stop smoking crack the day that my mom got clean. I
Yeah.
didn't plan on that.
No.
But something that you said was like she did the best she could to meet ends meet.
Yeah, exactly.
Recently, I've been doing some like inner child and shadow work, which if you don't know what that is, it's wonderful work to do.
Yeah, I
What
kind of looked it up when we talked about it on the phone today. So that's really interesting stuff. I want to.
It's so good. So it all started with my codependency like 2 years ago when I separated from my ex. We were together for 17 years on and off. Six for the last like bit of our relationship. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm doing a segment about toxic relationships, so I might have you
okay,
on for that
well,
one.
hold on to your hats. I got a lot to say about that.
Me
Uh,
too.
but no, so it started a couple years ago with my codependency, and then just recently this year, I started really looking at that inner child work, that shadow work. Like, why do I continually pick these people? Why is my picker broken?
Yeah.
Why is my picker broken? And so, like what you said, like she did the best she could to meet ends meet. I had somebody tell me the other day, they were like, yeah, that may or may not be true, but like, no, you didn't. You didn't do your best. Like, you didn't. You
Yeah.
put me into some very dangerous situations. You neglected me.
Yep.
You never taught me what it was like to be safe or feel safe in those moments when a child, those pivotal moments when you're very young, you learn that stuff.
Yeah.
And so when you learn that stuff very young, how it's like I knew how to read a room by the time I was like 4.
Yeah. And that's something you shouldn't know that quickly.
Never.
Yeah.
A child should never know how to like walk into a room and go boom, 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 read every single space in the room, know where the exits are, look at everyone's faces, see which ones look dangerous, which ones look maybe friendly. If you like got in a bad situation, you could go maybe to that person because that person's friendly. Like
Yeah.
I do that at restaurants, like at a very young age.
Yeah, that is intense and very self-aware too.
Oh, so self-aware. So
Yeah.
self-aware. But because I had to grow up quickly.
Hmm.
And a lot of us in recovery who had parents who were still in their active addiction when we were being raised, we had to grow up really quick.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
And
That's
it's not a matter of like, I don't blame. Early recovery taught me that like I can't blame my addiction on this, that, or the other. People, places, and things I cannot blame my addiction on. I made a choice and I made a continual choice for many years to continue that behavior.
yeah.
But I can still take a step back and look at what led me there, what took me to those places, and what kept me in those places. And a lot of it comes from very deep-rooted childhood stuff that I was taught and that I learned. I learned to protect myself very young. I was never taught what a functional relationship with a man was like. I never had my biological father was in his addiction as well, living on the streets, never around. And so I never was taught what that was like to have like a stable home. And
Yeah.
that
Same
and I
here. Yeah.
state stability was like, what's that? You know?
Yeah. Did it ever, did you think it affected you a lot in your adult life as far as like have inability to settle and things like that, moving around a lot, not having stable, relationships with your parents, of course. Did that just make it tough in your adult life?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like I was saying before, we moved around so much when I was little that when I became an adult, I just thought that that was normal. Like, okay, like this is what young adults do because that's what my mom did. She moved around a lot. So I was like, okay, so I'm in my addiction at that time, and I commercially fished in Alaska and worked on salmon boats for a while. I tore down steel buildings over here in this state, and then I'm running drugs at the same time, so I'm crossing state border lines with pounds of marijuana and other illicit substances,
Yeah.
and I never knew what it was like to settle. And
Yeah. Same
in
here.
my recovery, I think it was probably like 2 months after I got into full recovery because I have 10 years of sobriety and 7 years of like full sobriety or full clean time, everything from everything.
Yeah. Not
But
Cali sober or whatever.
no, yeah, I was Cali sober before Cali sober was a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but this place that I live now, the condo that I live in now, I've been here for we're coming up on 7 years.
Wow.
This is the longest I've ever lived in a place ever in my whole life. And I'm almost
Same.
40. Like,
I changed schools every year from, kindergarten up until I think freshman year of high school. I've changed every year. And then when I became an adult, like after college and stuff, I literally just randomly would just move to a different part of Seattle area into a new place for no apparent reason,
yep,
just to kind of change up my scenery every single like time the lease was up. And I didn't have to do that. I have no idea why I did, but kind of a
I did it
similar
all the
issue.
time too. All
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Literally, I was just like, oh, I guess the lease is up. I'm bouncing.
Yeah.
Bye.
Exactly. I'm like,
Place.
what?
Or I was on the road. Like that's another thing is that like from like 20, well, probably closer to like 18 all the way till my mid to late 20s, I just would be on the road sometimes and I'd live in my car and I'd go to festivals and I'd couch surf on friends' couches and then the winter would come and I'd be like, "Oh, I need a place to stay." So I'd like rent a room for somebody for like a couple of months and then I'd be like, "Oh, festival season again." So I'd be like back out there,
Yeah.
running the festival scene, just doing a bunch of drugs and running drugs and just
So I'm
like
curious. So I'm curious, like, what led up to. I know we were originally talking about kind of like your childhood and like obviously being exposed to alcohol at a young age, which led to a lot of trauma, obviously. How did that carry into? Did you continue like drinking on your own after, like, as you got older, or did you kind of wait till high school, or how'd that go?
Yeah, so when we finally moved to Idaho, I was in the late part of my third grade year, and fourth grade was like I would smoke cigarettes, but like my mom had moved us to this very small town in the middle of nowhere. So like I didn't really, it was like finally we had some kind of stability. We did have some family there, which was adopted family, like my mom's best friends and stuff, but we were really close with them.
Yeah.
And I mean, the partying was like one of those things that like was on the outskirts, and I was finally for a moment like had some sort of childhood in a sense. Like there was still, parts of it that were not acceptable, and that would be like the hellacious beatings that we would get. Me and my sister was talking about that as well as that, like,
Uh-huh.
I mean, nobody should go to school after being spanked and have welts on their ass and feel like they can't walk because I'm going to get emotional because they were beaten,
Yeah.
and that's not something that's like comfortable to say because I love my mom, but like we were not treated well. We were not treated well even by my auntie. I mean, like we had a paddle that had holes in it, a wooden paddle, wooden spoons that we would get spanked with. My mom would take her belt off of her waist in the middle of a Walmart and whip us. Like those things just happened. And I mean, it's one of those like where well, no wonder I have issues. No wonder I have a lot of I had I'm still I still work on it all the time about my self-worth and my self-love because I didn't know what love was a lot of the time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Um so like I said, there was stability in the sense that we were finally in a place where like we stayed longer than a couple of months, but there was other traumatic things that were still happening. So it wasn't until probably like 5th grade or 6th grade where I would like find alcohol and find, you know, other illicit substances. By 7th grade, I was drinking on the weekends every once in a while. It wasn't like a full-blown addiction yet. My addiction, my very first addiction was I would say like love, a love addiction, like finding like someone to love me, you
Yeah.
know?
Filling that void that you didn't
Yeah,
feel as a kid.
exactly. So it was like, finding a boyfriend or finding a girlfriend. Like my first relationship was with a girl. My first like ever sexual experiences outside of, what happened to me when I was little was with a girl because I felt safe
Yeah.
because men had always hurt me, whether it was like my stepdad or my, experience when I was super little, like I talked about. It was just like I felt safe with a girl. Um, but then, and for the longest time I thought I was a lesbian. Like I did. I was like, oh, I'm just lesbian. That's cool. Because I had two sets of lesbian aunts growing up. So like it was something that I, you know,
You grew up kind of understanding was
I
comfortable.
grew yeah, it wasn't something that was, like, outside of the, norm for us as
Yeah.
well. Even in a small town in Idaho, it was like we were the kind of the weird family out, and my cousin used to get kinda made fun of because she had 2 moms.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a small town in Idaho, it's a red state, like, eh.
Oh, I know. I'm from a small town in Idaho.
So
Yeah.
you understand the small town, the, like, mentality of, like, there's nothing to do other than drink and do drugs.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Like, there's really nothing to do there.
Nope.
So, yeah, so
Uh,
grade back so 7th grade rolls around, and I'm dabbling with different things, and another incident happens with my stepdad, and he was there when the first incident happened when me and my sister were molested when we were really little. And so this is years later. We're talking, 6 years later, 5, 6 years later, and he ends up trying to molest my sister, trying to molest me. And he gets put in jail for a little bit, but Idaho's kind of a corrupt state, so they let him out, and investigation kind of showed that, like, something was going on. And so this was where it kind of started me, like, we moved again. We moved again. We were doing this like, okay, we're gonna, you know, transition to another place. So we didn't move out of town, which was good. But it was definitely a moment where I started smoking weed a lot. I wasn't drinking really a whole lot, but marijuana, my boyfriend at the time, he was big pothead. It was like growing weed in a fish tank in his, basement and growing mushrooms in a fish tank in his basement. And so,
Hmm.
we would take mushrooms and smoke weed all the time. And then him and I broke up and I started dating another guy and um basically the drinking started. I remember I was 15, I want to say. I want to say I was about 15. And I had started doing a little bit of cocaine. There was like a little bit of that stuff happening at parties, but like it wasn't until like later that I really started getting into that heavy. It was mostly weed and alcohol because that's what really easy access in tiny town. You could play Hey Mister at a gas station. You could stand outside if you had cash. You could play Hey Mister in a small town, and
Over
there's
at the stinker station. Yeah.
right at your station, or like any of the gas stations really. There
Yeah.
used to be a Chevron where there's now like a mattress store up
Yeah.
in the orchards.
Yeah.
Yeah, there used to be a Chevron there, and there was a lady who worked there, and she would let us bring in like Tupperwares full of change to buy cigarettes at
Oh,
like 14 years old. You're like
Jesus.
13, 14 years old, and here's a grown ass like 40, 50-year-old, like our age, someone
Yeah.
that's allowing these like 13, 14-year-old kids to come in with their Tupperwares full of pennies and nickels
And
to buy
buy cigarettes. God.
cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah. My first cigarette during that time when I was in like fourth, fifth grade, I remember. It was just like we do the same thing, but we'd steal it from my friend's mom.
So in my teen years, after, childhood traumas, everything is just like a hot mess. There was an incident when I was 15 years old. Now, another trigger warning. Um, I did not remember all of this until recently. My sister and I've mentioned before, we've been talking a lot in this last like year and a half and kind of healing together by talking about some of this stuff that happened to us. And we had this like 4-hour conversation a couple weeks ago, and we dug up some stuff. We got into it. And an incident happened when I was 15 where it was the first time that I got like wasted. No, I'm talking like blacked out wasted. And I was at a friend's house. His parents were away. We broke into the liquor cabinet. Everybody was having a good time. And then I didn't want to go home because I was really like messed up. And the last thing I remember was like everything was spinning. Everything was out of control, right? Like I couldn't grasp what reality was. And if I don't know if you remember the first time you ever got blacked out, wasted,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
very disorienting. I mean, I'll never forget the feeling of not being completely in control, but then like just the pure fear the next morning when you wake up and you don't have any fucking idea what happened.
Yeah.
Any idea.
I hate that feeling, especially at first before I knew what it was like, you know. I was just calling people asking, "What did I do? What did I do?" You know. So it's
Yeah. So, mind you, the first time that ever happened to me, I woke up with my skirt twisted in my house. Like I was in my bed, but I had my skirt was all messed up. My shirt was a tank top that crisscrossed and it was completely like not put on properly inside out and I didn't have any panties on. That's how I woke up. And I remember waking my sister up and I remember asking her if she was a virgin because I was terrified. I was like, I hurt, and I don't know what is that supposed to feel like, right? And so I had no idea like what happened to me. I was 15. I had no clue what had happened to me. But and again, like I love my mom, but why was that never addressed? It was never addressed. My mom was not that type of person that would go to sleep. She waited for us. She always waited for us to come home. So there's no way that she didn't see that. There was no way that she wouldn't have saw that. And why wasn't that addressed? Why wasn't that investigated? Why wasn't that, you know, I still am so confused because, again, this is something me and my sister talked about recently that I had completely blocked out of my memory because I didn't want to remember that shit. Nobody wants to remember that shit. So my sister also helped me remember that about a year or so after that incident happened, the person who had assaulted me was at a party and came up to me and apologized for taking advantage of me. And I said, I totally forgot about that. So for 25 years, I have been walking around thinking and not knowing and questioning if something actually happened because I had blocked out the fact that the person who assaulted me actually apologized for that.
Wow. Jeez. So just like some really serious confirmation years later.
Years later. And so like I'm for the last few weeks it's been a very like it's a relief to finally like be like, "Oh, okay, that did happen. That did." You know? But it's also one of those like, "Oh shit, that did happen." Because my sister also, which I absolutely love my sister. Like I love her to death. Her and I are on a healing journey together. Um
That's great. So
uh
she's sober as well?
She had never really had a huge problem with
Oh,
with
okay.
alcohol. I mean, she would drink, but like she would never. There was, I mean, a few times that she would get drunk or whatever. She never had, not to the level of my addiction, not to the level of how I took it all the way to the next level.
What's the your age difference?
18 months,
Oh, wow. Okay.
so we're really close in age. So she also like brought to mind like so many other things that had happened to us and like um helped me she's helping me heal from all of this for sure. I forgot what I was going to say. Mm.
No, it's good to have a support system, as far as your sister goes. So you were going through, you felt like your mother never addressed that trauma that you were assaulted. And
Yeah,
then did that kick into more like heavy drug use and drinking?
you read my mind. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You totally read my mind. Because my sister told me, she was like, Amber, don't even, that's kind of when everything started. Like you had kind of been like smoking a little bit of weed or stealing cigarettes from mom or buying cigarettes from the, gas station or playing a little hey mister and getting people to buy you some wine cooler. But it was nothing like it was after that incident. After that incident, I went off the Richter scale and I started staying out all the time. I was smoking weed all the time. I got kicked off of I was in the dance squad in high school. I got kicked off the dance squad because I was getting high and going to parties, getting drunk. All this stuff started happening. Just completely like no care in the world. And my mom would have to try to come and find me at different places because I was never coming home at midnight. Midnight was my curfew, and she would have to try to come and find me. Um, and then some other incidents happened with my sister, and then some other incidents happened with me separate from my sister. And there was a conversation that happened after a big party, which is like an infamous party that everybody knows about in my age group because my mom showed up at this party with the cops. Like, oh yeah.
So your mom, despite like being kind of negligent and having kind of some abusive qualities, she did still have that like parental care for you, sort of like as far as
Yeah.
curfews and all that? Okay.
And at this time she had gotten sober,
Okay. So she took
right?
it a lot more seriously.
She was a little bit more serious about like, really keeping it. She always kept an eye on us. She always knew where we were at and like what was going on. But like this was more when she got after the incident with my stepdad, she got very, very overprotective.
Join us next time as we continue Amber's powerful story of addiction, healing, and recovery. To be continued.
It almost swung like really hard the other direction. But also I my sister and I both were just like not okay after that incident. Because
Yeah.
here was a man who was there when we were abused when we were little, and he was not a nice guy. I mean, like the guy would put me in a chokehold once and made me pass out. Like, I mean, there was some incidents where, yeah, I wouldn't even wish that upon my worst enemy. Nobody should go through that kind of stuff. Um, but after that happened, it was like my sister and I just didn't really care about my mom's boundaries. We were like, "Yeah, fuck you." Like, you didn't protect us again. And we only realize that now as adults, that behavior, like why we were doing that, because we were acting out, and even bad behavior was something that we were getting attention for. We were getting our mother's attention in some way, shape, or form. It might not have been good attention, but at least we were getting her attention.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so some incidences happened, and I've learned recently from my sponsor what triangulation is. Do you know what triangulation is?
No, please do tell.
So it can happen in a family, and it happens probably in other incidences, but for what I was told is that it can the parent can triangulate the children and keep them pitted against each other so that they can never gang up on the parent.
Ooh, okay. That makes sense.
You so you might tell your child one thing, and you might tell another child just a slight variation of that.
So manipulating the relationship.
Yeah, to keep us, like, away from each other,
Wow.
And I don't know if she consciously did that. I don't know. I pray that she didn't, like, consciously do that stuff. Um, I don't think she would, but it's one of those, like, "Aha! Aha! Okay, so this is why my sister and I had some of the issues, not all of the issues. I mean, I'm sure we created some of the own our we're siblings. I think we talked a little bit about CPTSD,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge advocate for PTSD and CPTSD.
Can you
Um,
explain what CPSD means for the listeners?
yeah, so CPTSD is a little bit more complex. It's called complex PTSD. So there's a little bit more layers to it than just PTSD. PTSD is usually from like one singular traumatic event, whereas CPTSD is from an ongoing, prolonged trauma. So a lot of us in recovery can relate to that based on the trauma that we had when we were kids. And even people who aren't in recovery, like people who have just had traumatic, tumultuous childhood that was traumatic.
Yeah.
And one of the key points about that is that it's a situation that you cannot escape. So these complex situations that we have, these traumatic experiences when we're children, we can't escape that. I couldn't escape living in a car and being, drug all over the nation to all these different places. I couldn't escape that. I was a kid. What was I going to do?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm digging into a little bit deeper on the research of it is because there are different symptoms from regular PTSD. Was It's like you have challenges maintaining relationships. You have basically a negative self-view.
Join us next time as we continue Amber's powerful story of trauma, addiction, and healing. To be continued.
Like you look at yourself in a very negative way, and that's usually because of what I was saying, when we're raised and taught these things when we're very little. We learn what love is, we learn what value is, we learn what safety is. And if we were never taught those things, then like the view of ourselves, we question that a lot. Those of
Yeah.
us with CPTSD, like, like am I wrong? Am I different? Am I like,
You
what's
question
wrong?
everything.
What's
Yeah.
wrong with me? Is there something wrong with me? Like, like
Insecurities through the roof, That's
through the roof.
I didn't become secure with myself till probably like 8 months ago. So,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And recovery does that for us. It does give us back some of our
yeah.
integrity and our self-worth and
Yeah.
um, that value, that love that we have for ourselves. We get to teach ourselves that. One of the symptoms that is most important that I've been digging into, like I said, is the um distorted perception of our abuser. So you may be able to relate to this. Like I said earlier, like I'm no longer saying she did the best she could with what she had.
Yeah.
No longer saying that because that is a distorted perception of my abuser. And I love my mom. Like I said, I absolutely love her. She's clean and sober. She's got all of these wonderful qualities about her. She loves us unconditionally. She was always a constant in our life because she actually was, disowned from her family. And so she would always tell us, it doesn't matter what you do. I don't even care if you murder somebody. I will always be there for you. I will always love you. But that doesn't mean that she didn't damage do some damage. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
So I was talking to my sister again about this. Like we have a distorted view of our abuser because we love her and she was always there and she'll always be there. But that doesn't mean that we have to accept the behavior. We don't have to live with the guilt and the shame of what she did.
Yeah. That's such a good way to look at it. It makes me look at my own situation a little differently, actually. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
right? This is just stuff within the last year. I've been working with a new sponsor that is just like, she is so good. She's been making me look at some stuff that I wasn't even looking at.
Yeah.
And this complex PTSD is something that is like, wow, okay, this is making sense. Why I have these sorts of, you know, why I have had these sorts of views about myself. Like I've done a lot of work in the last 10 years of doing recovery stuff. I've done a lot of work on myself. I love myself so much. I mean,
Good.
so much. But
I
that
love it.
wasn't something that I had when I first came into recovery. That was not something that I had when I first came into recovery. I thought I did. You drugs will give you that false security of like, yeah, I'm a badass.
Oh,
Like,
so that's what I thought too. It's just I drank and did cocaine for like
hello,
17 years. I
hello,
thought I was
I'm a badass.
I would walk out, put on my mask, do drugs, think I was so cool, have all these party friends, and in reality, I'd go home and I'd be depressed as hell. I hated myself. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. Or you get to the point where a lot of the times late in my alcoholism, I didn't even care about going out anymore. I just
same,
wanted, I just wanted to get my bottle and sit in the house.
just
Like,
isolate.
Stay tuned. This raw and powerful story of survival, addiction, and redemption continues on Rock Bottom with Ryan. To be continued.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.